Hello to everyone out there. Julija, Simas here, Agent 12, bringing you the CIA Solstice update. We are a few days earlier than the solstice, which is good, so that we can get you prepared for what the solstice represents and what the next 3 months astrologically are all about. So I'm very happy to have with me today a few fabulous agents. I'm going to introduce, first of all, Agent I, Andrew Smith in Ireland. Andrew, hello. I have to say you've been one of the longest agents and one that we don't see live on Facebook with us often. So I'm really happy that you're here. Thank you for making your time this morning.
Pleasure. Pleasure.
Good.
Lovely to be here.
And then, well, that's the top of my screen. Actually, I don't know how this records in the end, is Agent 114, Alex Trenoweth. Thanks for being here, Alex. Welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure.
We had the great pleasure of hanging out in London a few months ago, which Alex looked after me. So bonuses of being an agency and connecting to astrologers around the world. And I'd like to introduce you to our newest agent, Agent 316, Theo Naicker, in South Africa. And our first agent in South Africa. Welcome, Theo.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Julija.
Yeah, it's great to have you in the group, in the agency. And Theo is going to be talking to us today about a little bit about his theories on, let's say, the differences in the southern and northern hemispheres and astrology. And it is something that comes up as a big question a lot to students of astrology, or even people that have been doing astrology for a lot longer, to actually ask the question, well, is it different in the southern hemisphere? Because part of astrology and the zodiac is very much connected to the seasons, like Aries being spring and Libra being the other equinox. So anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about that. But first of all, let's just have a little chit chat about the signs of the times and where we are right now. You know, like when we look at the equinox chart, which we will as we go through this, it's very much aligned and very similar for the next 3 months. We have Mars, we have Saturn, we have the nodes all aligned, and Mercury is actually there this week. So what's the kind of feeling about all of this for all of us that's been building, actually? It's not just here now, because Saturn and Pluto have been on the nodes for a while, on the south node. Andrew, how is your kind of, let's say, attention, the clients you're seeing, all that kind of stuff? What are we going through out there?
It's really about the redistribution of power, isn't it? As we're heading towards the 12th of January next year. With the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn for the first time since 1518. Next time it'll be 2754. So it's kind of a big deal, because if you look at, 1517, which is the year before the 1518 conjunction, Martin Luther protested, and the power base of Europe was redistributed as the Protestant movement opened the way for what was eventually the scientific revolution, the age of reason, the agricultural revolution, and the complete society that we live in at this point in time. So I think as we hold a space to look at the cardinal earth dynamic, the creation of reality, and how we are securing our power base, our internal power base, certainly the existential questioning of relevancy and of purpose as we see the breakdown of the conventional way that we interact relationship-wise, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. It's just a fascinating time to be living. I mean, obviously, regardless of whether we listen to the news, fake news, or otherwise, there's certainly from my daily practice with clients, the issues are really more of an existential basis, as everything just seems to be in that balsamic phase. And we all know as astrologers, the balsamic phase is that preparation to let go and prepare for the next phase, which is also, we'll talk about it later on, I'm sure, but, as Venus is about to move into her invisibility stage of her pre-alignment superior conjunction in 14th of August, we're delving into a deeper state of consciousness in readiness and preparation. And that notwithstanding the lunar south node, allying itself with Saturn and Pluto these last while, it just makes for a very, very deep time, but emotionally quite fraught for quite a lot of people. I mean, I was just off the back of a week of dealing with people just having a very strong conversation with me about the frustration that women have with men not stepping up to the plate and growing spiritually, and being stuck in the yangs. Yeah.
It's Mars in Cancer, on this nodal axis right now. No, you're so right. So many people and clients that we're seeing right now are in big transitions, moving. A lot of people are moving, shifting, packing up stuff, like getting rid of stuff. I'm really seeing a lot of that, which is so suits, the baggage that we kind of stick around, keep, and what we move with, or what do we need that's really important, with, all of this. Saturn is the eliminator on the south node, and Pluto the transformer. So together, it's incredibly big work going on, even though it might not look like that in the big worlds, like the structures kind of breaking down. They're not maybe, happening fast enough, well enough, what have you, but it's happening. Sorry, Theo, you were going to say something?
Yeah, and also to sorry, Theo.
Oh, no, go. Sorry, I thought it was Theo.
No, I was just going to say, today we're meeting as Jupiter and Neptune square each other, in their waning square, the conjunction, relating back to 2009. And that again, backing up a theme, of how do we truly grow, and what do we believe in, and the feeling of being pulled in two different directions, down and through and up and out, encouraging to reflect on what you truly believe in, downwards to consider the origin of those beliefs, upwards to lift yourself into something higher and vaster than your ego, outwards in an attempt to connect to whatever God means for us as individuals, and letting go all these expectations and allowing ourselves to float is all that we can actually do at this time, since control has no place in the world at this time. And so it's just a fascinating time to be walking with you all, and just observing what's happening.
Don't be scared out there, it's going to be okay. That's the Jupiter Neptune what do you call it, faith that we have to have through all of this. I mean, when we looked into 2019, all astrologers would usually pick the main aspects that have happened for the year. And Jupiter and Neptune, of course, are the Jupiter and Neptune waning square is, of course, one of them. It happened in January, the exactness now, and in September with the next equinox. So it really is, in a sense, a guiding light for 2019 through what we have on the nodal axis going on, that just, in a sense, intensifies into 2020. Alex or Theo, would you like to just add anything as our introduction here to the state of the world?
I was just looking at the charts, and I was thinking, I was just looking at the outer planets, and I was thinking about how they're all activated, and the nodes as well, and just how that we're all kind of pulled in together. This isn't about individuality anymore. This is about us working together as a global, universal team. And on top of the Saturn being on the nodal axis, the south node, we also have it sextile to Neptune. One of the things that's been on a lot of people's mind is the environment, and about how we can save the planet, and really taking on personal responsibility, being more conscious of the plastics that we use, being careful about the water, being more active. Julija, when you were here in London, you were part of the protests, and I've also been a part of the protests as well, about, just, to the people. But we were looking at this global idea that if we don't act together as a team and put aside our differences, we are really screwed. And, it's not, we're not looking at, a million years down the road. We're looking at 100 years down the road. When I was in Cape Town, Theo, I'm sure you'll be aware of this, of the drought that was in, Cape Town is surrounded by, 2 oceans, but there was no water, reminded me of a Coleridge poem, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. So I think we're it doesn't need to be terrifying if we're responsible. But I do think that we all need to step up to the plate. And those are kind of my thoughts as I looked at the solstice chart, that we're no longer in this sort of situation where we could just sort of shrug our shoulders and say it's somebody else's responsibility. It's our responsibility.
Well, then if we could have more consensus with rogue nations to actually all agree on, what can be done regarding the climate, so to speak. But
it's also interesting that we're moving from morning star Venus to evening star Venus between the solstice and the equinox, and that's moving from an egoic heart value of us working our own personal process through, as we're now transmuting and trying to offer it up, moving more into a more social collective piece. And as Alex is beautifully stating it, part of the redistribution of power is moving from pyramid to circle, moving from leadership up top to leadership from within, and collaborating with us, which I just see as part of the movement over the course of the transition from solstice to equinox. Sorry, thanks, Alex. Just
no, that's all right. No. Buzz in whenever you need to. What about for you, Theo? What's the state of things down where you are?
All right. Well, firstly, I wanted to say that even though I do flip the signs for the southern hemisphere now, it doesn't really matter in this case, because Capricorn and Cancer as an axis is just so heavily emphasized for everybody. And what I've been seeing, just take it back from a mundane level to a more, everyday level in people's lives, with the clients I've been seeing the last couple of months, is they're going through home changes, family relationship changes, moving, settling in. There's some delays happening there, some things moving forward. And for us having Mars in Capricorn this month, everyone's just been super, super busy and getting things done. So what I've seen the last month is just people just rushing ahead and making those things happen. And I think with both the Pisces affinitive planets, Neptune and Jupiter, being in square configuration for the year, as we just mentioned earlier, is one of the feature aspects of the year. Maybe that's a call to some kindness or compassion, even though, we may be uprooted or be moving around a lot, and there's all these objectives that have to be put in place and new structures that we are going through, both politically but also in our personal lives. Maybe it's a point to call to compassionate understanding, and that everyone else around us may be going through the same process. And it's, to practice that level of compassionate and emotional intelligence with how we're going about just interacting with people.
Definitely. Thanks, Theo. Actually, just something that has become, let's say, a lot more obvious, I think, in the last couple of months is the attention to astrology on the media, like as in articles being written that astrology is now, out there, and so many percentage of young people believe in astrology and all that kind of thing. As much as, when we started all of this years ago, guys, or the CIA, and it was our purpose to get astrology out there, social media's helped, astrologers just, all of us sort of get ourselves out there. And I mean, we have to be excited for that, don't we? We have to be, it's like, wow, there's astrology is out there, and for the better, because more people are into it. But then there becomes this more of a, and again, it's part of this nodal thing going on, as the responsibilities that we take on as astrologers to what we, let's say, put out there. A lot of astrology can be very sensationalist, just because it's about the clicks and the memes and the, I want to get 100 likes, and, and people are like, there's so much of that going on. So how do we keep it real in that sort of momentum that is behind it all these days? I don't know, just a question.
I think what I would, my comment to that is, one of the things I look at for astrology is Uranus as an archetype in the world. And of course, what is Uranus today is Saturn tomorrow. So I just see it as a natural progression of what is new and on the fringe becoming part of the establishment, because Saturn with the South Node, I think Alex might echo what I'm saying here, is that people are looking for an alternative structure in their life. And the South Node, from a Vedic point of view, always will try to, yes, develop a higher perspective on something. You know, people are suffering with their bodies or minds, mental anxiety and depression, and things are increasing concerns for not just from a political point of view, but a personal point of view around the world. And I think people are looking for a more considered or considerate approach to healing and understanding themselves, and adding those new structures going forward into their lives, as the Great Conjunction will sort of need us to all do. So Uranus now moving into, you know, the time for Aries, Uranus is finished. My astrology, my thing, me, you know, individual startups everywhere. And it's time for that Taurus collective, that sense of coming together now. And I really hope that that's the way we're moving.
Or coming down to earth, you know, making it more real. Yeah, Uranus in Aries was so, for those of you out there that might not know, we do call Uranus the modern ruler of astrology. Mercury was the ancient ruler, and in a sense, I suppose we look at both of them, although, you know, the outer planets have so much to do with trends of astrology, Pluto and Neptune as well. So it's a combination, but with Uranus, we can probably see the trends more obviously of what is kind of astrology's, or what's happening to astrology through the 7-year cycle, because it's so kind of regimented as well. But having said that, I'm doing a study, that's my talk in India, Alex, which we'll talk about later. Okay, so anything to add there, Andrew? We'd like to hear from you about this, as you've been a teacher for a long time and seen many things change. Oh, Alex first. Sorry, Alex.
I've been doing this since the 17th of January 1993. So just around the Uranus-Neptune conjunction in cardinal Earth. And, you know, obviously being in Ireland, you know, a deeply Catholic country, you know, and the rewriting of the Bible to manage to get rid of the astrological content that was still there. It's been fascinating just watching that, as Ireland went from a 95% attendance at church to 20 odd, you know, percent. And again, just mirroring what we're talking about. You know, if you want to call it the Kali Yuga, if you want to call it the balsamic phase before a redistribution of power, there's a number of different things that you could attribute to the existential questioning that people are searching. And astrology is a language of consciousness. And so therefore, it's fundamentally inscribed within our soul's essence. We all know astrology. Our calendars are astrological. You know, our sayings are astrological. The days of the week are, everything is astrological. So, you know, I mean, certainly Karen, my wife, and I have taken the approach that we remember astrology. And it's hit a chord with those who, you know, kind of work with us, because we know everybody knows it. So therefore, it's no surprise that as we're freeing ourselves from the shackles of oppression, you know, starting to remember, you know, our origins and where we come from, and the language that we all speak, the currency that we speak, of course, is going to rise. And of course, there's going to be different interpretations, because astrology, like music, I'm not particularly into trash metal. You know, I don't really like jazz, but I can really appreciate jazz and trash metal. So we all have our different flavors as astrologers and different takes, you know, and certainly, as you know, I don't really get involved too much in the community or the whole, guise of I just post.
Only with us.
You know, ignore
Lucky
the fact that you're
us.
supposed to do a couple of sentences. Yeah, a sentence isn't just right, you know, and that. So, you know, it is fascinating. I have to say, though, we've not seen any increased, I haven't seen any increased demand in terms of people wanting to work with myself. There's always been an openness, but then we're Irish, and
There's
Irish have always had a very
deep... though, Andrew, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's more people doing it that, you know, when you were doing it 20 years ago or something, there probably weren't many at all as teachers or whatever. Now there's kind of you know, there's a lot everywhere, really. Yeah.
Well, there's not a lot of full-time practitioners. There's a lot of people interested in throwing their hat at it. But in terms of full-time, we know that the full-time professionals are few and far between, because of the commitment. And it's a way of being. It's a life path.
Yeah, there's more people going through the hard yards, as in taking it on seriously and that type of thing. So yeah, well done. Yeah. And to all who thinking of doing astrology or learning it, let's say more formally, it's a damn good idea. It won't be a waste of time, that's for sure. Alex, have you got something to add there? Because you're a social, you know, very social agent, let's say, all over the place, all the time, connecting people up in the world.
I just wanted to kind of address the idea of, I'm also a teacher. I taught English for a long time. And I just wanted to kind of address the idea of memes and the more simple kind of astrology. Now, I'm not a star sign columnist. I tried to be, but I didn't enjoy it so much. But I do enjoy the humor that comes with memes and the kind of the double joke that comes with memes. And I get a bit of, you know, rubbish from people telling me that I know, oh, but you're a professional astrologer, you shouldn't be doing that. Well, you know, as a professional English teacher, I have to get down the comic books to teach Shakespeare to unwilling students, because there has to be a level of engagement somehow, and you have to get them interested. But the thing is, I'm an English teacher. I know what I'm doing. I'm professional. What I object to is I object to someone who maybe hasn't put in the time to learn astrology properly, who maybe isn't as open-minded, or who, you know, you don't have to throw lots of money at a course, but you do have to be aware of the opportunities that astrology can bring you. And I say object, maybe it's a bit of a strong word, but I just think that, you know, we need to consider the source of where someone who calls themselves an astrologer, where their information is coming from and how they're interpreting, and where, you know, what angle it is that they're approaching astrology. I mean, you know, there was a scandal in the 1970s that the astrology columns that were appearing in newspapers weren't written by proper astrologers. And so, you know, we're kind of repeating that cycle again these days, where we're actually wondering, okay, well, that's a very funny meme, but is that, you know, what are you saying about cancers? And I've been noticing on Twitter, you know, people are really down on Scorpios, down on Geminis. And, you know, it's just like, why? You know, it's all a part of the cycle. You can't be picking on one sign or another. But yet, having said that, you know, some of my memes are about looking at particular aspects of a sign. So, you know, I'm just trying to say that, you know, I think the reason why astrology is now becoming very popular is partly through J.K. Rowling. Thank you very much, Harry Potter. But also this dissatisfaction with the way things are going, which is what Theo and Andrew were talking about as well. People are no longer happy, you know, taking someone else's word for things. They want to explore their own individuality, and they want to restructure their life, which I think is perfectly fitting in with the Saturn conjunct the South Node again. And I think the other thing I wanted to say to anybody who's a beginner, who's thinking about taking up the long road to becoming qualified, however you want to define that, is that, you know, I think all of us, all four of us here on this panel will say that we're not the same astrologers we were last year. You know, we're constantly learning, constantly taking on new information. We're always looking for something else and refining our techniques. And I think all of us, I don't want to speak for you all, but I'm sure that you might, to some extent, agree with me that we cannot possibly know everything about astrology. And so therefore we have to collaborate, and we have to have panels like these where we talk about our different opinions and our different approaches, so we can demonstrate, well, listen, hey, we're individuals. And just as we are individuals, so is astrology an individual approach, yet it is collective, like the planet that rules us, Uranus, and also the planet that used to rule us, Mercury, which is about communicating and keeping our ideas out into the open.
Yeah, and keeping it diverse. There is diversity in you know, again, from where we're from, our backgrounds, our teachers, you know, what we then, let's say, become to a specialist in, perhaps as an astrologer, to, you know, that's our path that we take. So we go, and yeah, the learning never stops, does it? Or the agent's work is never done. I'm just going to share the screen now, my screen here for just a few, what's the word, prompts for us to talk about here. Let me just get my spotlight happening. Can you see that? Yeah. So let us have a little think about, this is now what is most important in a sense that we'll just touch on now as we kind of talk. I hope everyone can see you guys now that I've taken the screen away. It's only the one that's talking that can be seen. So anyway, when you talk, you'll come up, guys, all right? So we talked a bit about the Jupiter, Saturn, Jupiter square Neptune, the action on the nodes, which will become much more apparent as we're looking into the next 3 months, the eclipses, an eclipse season with Mercury retrograde that begins in the middle of it, the Venus star point, as Andrew touched on, and one of my kind of favorite things about what's coming up in August or the end of August is an alignment of a lot of personal planets in Virgo. So here's the solstice chart as we can see. The sun down the bottom here is in Cancer. It's gone to zero Cancer, and that will be the 21st of June PM time in the UK, or Greenwich time. And all these things that we were talking about, Mars, Mercury on the north node, and the south node being, you know, very closely aligned with Saturn, the Jupiter and Neptune square happening here, with everything, or Mars and Mercury closely, and the node closely aligned to Neptune. Now, again, as we were talking, eclipses will be coming up soon after the solstice, and we can tell we're getting very close to eclipse season. For those of you that are learning to read charts out there, you know, this is why we're going to focus on the actual astrology chart, so you can get better at sort of reading what's coming up. When we know the sun gets closer to the nodal axis, we know that eclipses are about to, let's say, come on. And then, of course, the moon has to align with the sun on the node to get what we call eclipses happening. You know, we did touch on, and Theo touched on this alignment, or this axis, perhaps not having to be changed for northern and southern hemispheres, and most of us don't do that. We'll talk about that later, because anything that's on an axis is going to incorporate the other half somehow, like yin and yang anyway, right? So we've got this, it's almost like, you know, the Cancer planets are very sort of much harking into homeland security. I remember Armand Diaz wrote about Mars in Cancer, and it's like what makes us most secure and comfortable, and what we need to do or get rid of to actually perhaps get more that way. Now, that's on a personal level and on a collective level at this point. So now the solstice chart, as we say, can often look at the next 3 months ahead. So as we see things on this axis, this is not changing quickly. Mars and Mercury, well, actually Mars will move off, but Mercury will move off a bit and then go retrograde back into this axis over the eclipses. So does anyone want to touch on anything in this chart that stands out, you know, about, let's say, having a look at what's coming up in the next couple of months? Oh, any of you out there, agents, I mean.
I was looking at the chart set for London, and it shows Scorpio rising, which means that both the modern ruler Pluto and the traditional ruler Mars are in opposition on the nodes. And of course, I don't want to say the B word again because I'm so sick of it. But you know, a lot of stuff happening, and that particular the South Node falls in the 3rd house. I'm always really hopeful that the way we educate our children will change. And I've been saying it for a long time that, you know, the current system that we have in education is based on the Industrial Revolution, the idea that we're going to be as cost effective as we can, cut as many corners as we can, 30 children to one teacher, all progressing at the same time, at the same rate. So I'm really hoping that we're moving away towards, you know, doing everything on the cheap in education and start looking towards meeting the needs, the true needs of the students, which are as individual as the needs of astrologers are. So, you know, I just wanted to kind of throw that out. I think, you know, that structure, the educational structure, is very much in a state of flux and change. And just to give you an example, the former educational secretary, I can't think of his first name now. I think it's Michael Gove. Now, when I was teaching, I just disliked this man so much, and you know, he made a lot of changes that made things very difficult. For example, to teach now, I have to get police clearance, which cost me recently £70 just to prove I'm not a criminal, for a piece of paper that says the same thing every year for the past 25 years. I am not a criminal, you know, to hear that he's now admitted to taking cocaine. You know, he was the former educational minister, and now he's saying that he's admitted to taking first-class drugs, which would have made him ineligible to be a teacher. So, you know, I think little things like that, like the little catching people out, and, you know, is causing the structure to, bearing in mind that Neptune is sextile to Saturn, is destabilizing things. And as it falls in the third house, as I said, in the London chart, I felt that, you know, well, I'm hoping always that the educational system is undergoing change.
Well, probably not just the educational system with Scorpio rising, but yeah, no, good points. Of course, yes.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, I was just going to say, as Alex brings up, different places on the planet will have different risings. We've just got a zero Aries chart here because we're not kind of really looking at one particular place. But go ahead, Theo.
I wanted to echo what Alex was saying about, yes, the structural changes, and the B word in Britain is, well, the buzzword and the B word and the Boris word, and all the B words you can think of are happening in the UK right now and for the coming months, for this quarter for sure. But what I wanted to point out was that the Mercury influence there, yes, I think you can see it as an axis, because I'm just looking at this as an axis of Cancer and Capricorn, talking about work-home balance, both from a national point of view, foreign policy versus domestic policy, and how are those coming together? How are those happening with each other? And so it'd be interesting to pay attention to those issues. And Brexit is obviously a typical case of that pull as an opposition of these two archetypes. But I do also feel like with Saturn with the South Node in Capricorn, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, those structural issues in governments up there are coming into question that have been long established for a very long time. We're not having that happen down here in the Southern Hemisphere so acutely. But the Mars Cancer opposition to that, yes, that's classical. Traditionally, Mars in Cancer is one of the indicators for substance use. I'm not sure substance abuse, but definitely substance use or substance knowledge. So, you know, Mr. Gove having been found out that Cancer Mars opposing the combination. But the other thing that's important in the Northern Hemisphere is with the Mercury involvement with Mars as a directive to do something about the environment, about the home, about the land, the moon, you know, what is happening to the environment and how we're sustaining and providing for ourselves in that way. And Mercury also showing the youth involvement with that as an increasing voice in that dialogue that's being pushed into the political environment. So I think that is also a very strong statement going forward, that yes, this just might be the solstice chart for, you know, the next quarter, but I think it's an ongoing theme.
For sure. Andrew?
The hermetic axiom that we use in astrological as within, so without, is as much reflected in these charts called mundane charts as they are in the personal chart. And if we look at the opposition as being a point of question of in the face of oppression, in the face of challenges, how do we direct our passion? How do we direct our energy? Do we openly express our sentiments and feelings in a reactive manner? Or do we actually take the time, you know, to really look within ourselves in how we direct our own energy? Because the state of the world is a reflection of the state of our collective inner psyche. And as we are ourselves moving through a time of personal and collective space holding around how we are envisioning what our reality is to be, it is still also reflected, as Theo has just said, with the Mercury-Mars piece of how, when we communicate, do we communicate our lower chakras, our secure from our security points, and are we securing ourselves, and are we really taking the responsibility, Saturn, to rein in or to funnel our own energy, Mars, in a way that can be sustained and consistent as opposed to reactive, because we know the lower vibration of a Mars Pluto Saturn opposition can be quite tense and quite fraught, but it also can be incredibly disciplined, focused, determined and resolute to really focus our attention, our consciousness into overcoming and tackling our own inner enemies of our soul. And as we tackle our enemies of our soul, so too does it have a knock-on effect in terms of the collective, just if we want to personalize the the solstice message of the opposition.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's right. It's there for all of us, to experience that. Thanks, Andrew. I like that Venus is actually in the alignment with Jupiter and Neptune at the solstice, so softening, or let's say putting in that story. Again, we'll talk a bit about her as we go because she's doing a star point in August. But to remind ourselves, what we're after and what we want out of this lifetime, without that sort of selfish attitude or egoic one, we do have to look after closer to home first. It's like happy kids make happy adults, that type of thing. What are we doing at home is a focus. How everything's moving from that point is also very important. So anyway, it's a bit of a reflection to sort of get back to home a bit, and what that means, and your comfort levels as well, and why, or if and why you're not comfortable. Now, let's go to the next chart. There's a full moon, just before we move on, there's a full moon blooming, and it's full tomorrow night, and it's a pretty cool full moon because the next full moon will be an eclipsed full moon that goes to be conjunct Pluto. So we're going into eclipse season with this full moon, because the next lunation, the new moon, is going to be an eclipse. So it's quite an exciting time we're going into. I think heralded by this full moon at what we call the galactic center. Any comments on that, agents? No, we'll keep moving. There's a lot being written about that.
With all full moons, just this is for students of astrology, there related back to the conjunction to the sun in 6.5 months previous. So if you look at the development of this full moon, you can see the antecedents of it back in the mutable fire conjunction back in, I think it was December sometime.
December,
and,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's just an interesting loop to watch, the, planting the seed as we do, before springtime takes place, and see how it emerges at the bendings, when you get the quarter points, and then when they reach the summer phase, as it hits the full moon. So it's just for those of you who are interested in that type of development to go back and reflect on, what was initiated or what was created about the open exchange of one's spirit back in December. And let's see the blossoming of that piece coming into the full moon. So that's the only thing. It's not directly about this particular full moon, just full moons in general.
Yeah, no, good point. And that full moon would have taken us into, or that new moon, sorry, the 2019 sort of energy, or what we were kind of anticipating about that. Now, this is the solar eclipse that's coming up soon, after this full moon in 2 weeks, so to speak. Mercury is about to go retrograde, and is stationing at this solar eclipse. We can see the moon and the sun together at 10 degrees 37 Cancer, and very close to the nodes. So it's not a total eclipse. To be total, it needs to be like right on the node. This is now 7 degrees apart, close, but it's not total, is it? No. And What I have looked at to do with this solar eclipse chart, when we are in eclipse season, what we want to look at is the 19-year cycle of eclipses, so metonic cycles. So all of us can look back and go, you know, there was an eclipse around this 11-degree mark of Cancer 19 years ago. So the year 2000, you know, what was happening in your life, because that area of your chart was highlighted by these eclipses as well. And then the other thing you look at is the Saros cycle, which is 18 years and 11 days, making it not the same degree as 10 degrees of Cancer, but actually 10 degrees or 11 degrees prior. And it was at 0 Cancer on the solstice, so June the 21st of 2001. This is the Saros return. And it was 2001, as I said, but this is now what we call the pre-eclipse to September 11th. I don't want to alarm anyone, but it's just an interesting kind of combo to look at eclipses from 19-year cycles and 18 years and 11 days. And Andrew, I know this one's important for you.
But on a personal basis, as I said, absolutely, as I said to you before we started, that's the date of my wedding. We intentionally, Karen and myself, chose the 21st of June at 12:41 local time here to marry. So we're having our nodal return.
So I'm not looking at your wedding chart, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, right. Oh, wow.
This is the energetics of my marriage, so I know it intimately.
Oh, wow. Well, without prying too much, it's Mercury retrograde. Interesting. People, I mean, this is an interesting thing to think about. People would say, oh, don't get married on Mercury retrograde. It's probably the best thing you've ever done.
I launched my 2 businesses, Julija, right, with Mercury retrograde. So, you know, love it. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, go on, sorry.
No, but what I'm wanting to sort of think about with Mercury retrograde, people can get like, there was a funny meme today that I saw, and it's like the full moon's getting heavy because of so much projected onto it. Everything's blamed on the full moon, you know. Full moon's about to drop out of the sky because everything's, you know, it's a bit like Mercury retrograde comes up as well. And, you know, there's just so much disaster-bound kind of ideas. But as you say, Andrew, so many, Mercury retrograde means do things differently. You know, if you've been meaning to start something, you know, it can be the most perfect time to actually do something through Mercury retrograde, like get married. I like the.
Can I say
that too?
Can I say that I do a lot of traveling, and I have Mercury retrograde natally, and I've been watching very carefully. I've also flown on the supermoons and all that stuff. The only time I've ever had trouble at customs or whatever is when Mercury is direct. And every time I have Mercury, I deliberately now travel during Mercury retrograde because I know that I'm going to fly through customs and I'm not going to have any problems. So only maybe 2 or 3 times of all the flights I've ever taken, Mercury was direct when I had trouble. And so I've got a really big problem with people picking on Mercury retrograde too, because, you know, people like Michael Jackson and Hillary Clinton and Janis Joplin were all born during the Mercury retrograde phase. So, you know, I think we need to be, you know, lay off Mercury retrograde. It's kind of cool, if you ask me.
Lay off. Yeah, that's right.
I just wanted to go back to this Saros cycle that you brought up the root chart for it, which I think is fantastic because there's a lot of resonance that's happening between Jupiter and Saturn and the eclipses, as you can probably imagine going forward. And the Great Conjunction of 2000, which happened at the end of Taurus, and the next one that's going to be in Aquarius, is bookending this 20-year period from 2000 to 2020. And the Great Conjunction that happened in Taurus, 25 degrees, I think it was, back in 2000, is now having the Uranus approach it very steadily. And now you're looking at the Saros root chart, which is also linking and repeating in this year, in 2019. So for me, it's also setting up the underlying games and new players in the world from a global financial perspective to be set up. And of course, what happened after 2001, or in 2001 itself, is that what was the most stable currency at the time had some rumblings going on, and you could argue that we're still trying to prop up that system ever since then. In 2008 was one of the times where we realized, okay, this is the last time we're going to be able to maybe prop this thing up. And then we've had Uranus in Taurus with the virtual currencies, and once they start being regulated more and the banks take them on more. So I think what this is saying to me from a global financial system point of view is that we are moving. Yes, there are political changes that are happening, and maybe part of the deconstruction in the Northern Hemisphere that's happening with governments, within governments, in the establishment, is facilitating the financial sector to take more responsibility and accountability also for what has been happened and what is being perpetuated going forward, and accommodate those changes in a positive way. So I think it's good. It's moving in the direction it needs to move in.
The root of the Saros cycle that brings us back to 991, the 10th of October 991, really holds the notion that the eclipse then, which started it all off, was opposing Jupiter and semi-squaring Neptune from Libra to Aries. And part of the whole thesis of that is, how do we actually communicate in an open way what we believe in, which is backing up pretty much the thesis that Alex is referring to around education, we're referring to about the political system and the questions that we hold around our structures there. And one thing, just to go back on this balsamic preparation for the cardinal Earth conjunction of Saturn and Pluto in 2020, is that our current economic and financial system was established in the 1600s, and it stayed pretty much the same structure with a few modifications really for the last 500 years. So we are seeing quite a profound need for us to start to vocalize our own thoughts or opinions on the direction that we're taking as a collective, let alone on a personal basis. But just for that, just to repeat, every Saros cycle has an origin or birth moment, and this one goes back to the 10th century, and you can look at it and how it then develops over time, because in mundane astrology, as we know, those of us who look at it, it's not just one chart. We're looking at series of charts over time and looking at developments from the core seed through to its finality. So thank you.
Yeah, they're a fascinating cycle. You got to become a member to know more about the Saros cycles, because there's a few really great webinars in the CIA membership on the Saros, on eclipses in general. But the Saros, I love the family of eclipses, the Saros, as they sort of come down the planet and then sort of, like over time, peak and then sort of dissipate. Really fascinating to find out your own Saros family and what you were born into, as in the pre-eclipse before your birth. But too much to get into about that here today. Let's keep moving on. So again, 19 and 18 year and 11-day cycles are what you want to look at with eclipses to remember. And, probably a lot of you will be going, that happened, or this takes me back to that time. So do reflect on that, what you learned, what can be done differently perhaps as well. Did we look at the lunar eclipse? I've gone straight past it. And then the lunar eclipse, 16th of July 2019. And here we have, again, the sun's close to the nodes, but on the other side of the node, the moon's moved on, of course, 180 degrees in the 2 weeks, and is now conjunct Capricorn, conjunct Pluto over the other side. Venus is kind of softening this eclipse, being on the north node. Any thoughts with this particular chart? Mars has moved to Leo. The rest is kind of stable, or as it was. No, well, we'll keep going. Oh, sorry.
Well, I had a little meme because the day after the solar eclipse is when the Venus moves into Cancer. So I just had a little meme I wanted to share.
Oh, okay, I've got to stop my share, so if you can do
Oh,
that.
okay. If that's okay. Oh, I might have messed it up. I don't know what I've done. Sorry. Can you see it? My little kitty cat. It says Venus in Cancer.
All right.
Everyone is entitled to a day in bed, but the cat is looking, a little bit vicious and saying, "You do realize if I wasn't so warm and snuggly, I'd kill you, right?" So Venus, we think Venus is so warm and snuggly and goddess of love and everything. She's also the goddess of war, and so I was looking at that Venus, is kind of thinking to myself, well, it looks nice, but maybe maybe it's not quite what she appears.
Well,
okay, so I'll let you go.
It's like, it's like, Mama Bear protecting her lair. Yeah, this is, this is mine. So Venus gets involved, and it's the moon is like that too, of course.
Yeah.
But also adding to that, it's the next slide. It's Venus is not seen. Venus is invisible because she's inside the beams of the sun as she's heading towards the superior conjunction. So certainly wanting the dream world and wanting to sleep and engage, it's certainly appropriate, because when Venus is just before its superior conjunction, there's a strong desire to overcome a lot of the phonetic base elements of our heart's desires, and to immerse into a process of deep inner change, moving from an ego-based heart to a greater unconditionally based heart. And so that lunar eclipse is really starting to highlight our own emotional and heart-based realities, and how we're able to transform the structures of the way that we take our relationships, and how we openly express our heart energy against the backdrop of a lot of the fraughtness that's going on around the empowerment of the sacred feminine, which is really largely a bigger issue that's progressing through this year, and has done for quite some time, as we move again towards more circular, inclusive consciousness.
Well, yeah, with Venus kind of highlit on the node for the lunar eclipse, it does speak of her, the importance of what you've just talked about, and the rise of the sacred feminine. And, it's her time at the other side of the sun. She's not visible, as you said, but the Venus star point will be in Leo. This is now the 14th of August. And again, when I look at the year ahead, and I know Andrew does, I will always look where the Venus star points are, because, it's about, this is how you engage with, let's say, living the life that you want. If Venus is indeed a guide to, a fulfilling life, Venus and the sun, put them together. That's what they speak of. So, so 21 Leo, think about where that is in your own chart, and think about the cycles of 4 years to do with Venus, not only 8 years, but 4 years ago, the retrograde was there. 8 years ago, the outer conjunction was happening as well. Look, I get a lot of people with aha moments, clicking off in their heads when I talk about Venus star points. Anything to add there, agents?
Yeah, can I just go back slightly to what Andrew said? Because he kind of nicely, you fell into my trap, Andrew. You beautifully demonstrated why I like memes, because they seem very simple, but actually if you look at them and unpick them a little bit by professional astrologers, you actually find a bit more meaning in it, because we understand the symbols on a deeper level than somebody who's got a more casual kind of approach to astrology. So I just wanted to add that to the mix. We're looking at something, a simple idea, but yet we're picking it apart and bringing it out, and which is exactly the way a teacher who's teaching a new topic or something would approach the classroom. Very simple ideas, expanding it to something bigger and more profound. So thank you, Andrew.
I like that. Alex, I always enjoy your memes. So we have a history with memes in astrology. Coming to the previous chart, and also I guess this chart, the Leo star point that was up here, I find that Venus with the north node, it is the north node of the moon in the sign of the moon. So Venus and the moon, their energies sort of coalesce in the sign of Taurus. So that's again for me, the community needs to come together and hold hands in that way going forward. It's also the emphasis on so many green parties emerging in political systems around the world. And also, yes, the financial system, I don't want to emphasize that too much, overemphasize it, but that Uranus is squaring the Mars-Mercury sort of midpoint. So I also think it's going to be a call to action for a lot of people in their personal lives, where they're going to be seeing that, now I have those aha moments and I'm moving forward with this energy. And I think we're moving away from the Saturn Cancer axis, which will be active for quite some time going forward. But I feel like this Uranus squaring the Mars-Mercury midpoint in Leo is sort of setting the stage for a lot of things happening after 2020, the Aquarius great conjunction at 0 degrees, etc. So I think it's not a trivial time. Whatever actions people are going to be taking towards, between July and September are going to be non-trivial in nature. They're going to have an impact. Harking back to, yes, the Saturn-Neptune squares of 2016. Here we've got Jupiter-Neptune squares that are happening now. So there's been a lot of things piling up for a long time. And what I like about Uranus is that it goes through signs, and just whatever's been stuck there, it helps you just break it free. So there could be an element to these actions people are taking that's going to be, I'm moving forward, a sense of freedom with what I want, more personal volition in the action that I'm taking going forward. That's what I wanted to say.
Very true. Thanks for pointing that out. Uranus squaring that Mercury retrograde and Mars, during a lunar eclipse as well. So, yeah, all that you say is it might be that jolt that is necessary, to help us out of something that we know needs to change or what have you. Quite a few surprises in that mix, that's for sure. But again, great opportunities to shift something as well, if you've been needing to, that kind of thing. And we always say eclipse, let's say portals are times of turning points for that reason. So the Leo, the star point for Venus, if we can see she's very closely aligned in this star point with Pluto. By an inconjunct aspect, so what we call that sort of irritating aspect that needs and can be learnt. There can be a lot learnt from that irritation. But when we think of Venus and the Sun together in Leo, it's a very creative point, very, very creative. So there's part of the story that, let's say, needs attention and creative energy input into it as we go through, August in this case as well. Andrew, do you want to add anything to that? You talked about Venus.
Really, the heart of that is combining fire and earth, which is bringing a more physically manifest form to our spirit. I mean, remember, fire is the realm of spirit and of vision. Earth is the realm of materialization. So if a quincunx is about making adjustments, we can see how we're being challenged to go inwards to our own inner heart spirit. What do we love? What do we enjoy? And how are we able to create that in our world around us? How are we able to transform ourselves as we move away from the hunger of our lower desire nature? Because remember, the star point of superior conjunction of Venus to the Sun is moving from morning star to evening star, and an evening star Venus is concerned in a yin manner with society and with the bigger picture of our contribution to society, whereas a morning star is concerned about self. And even though there's a lot of morning star activists, who are very passionately putting out their values into the world, but it comes from them as opposed to an evening star, which is, they're not really about my values, but they're more about the collective value of what we're contributing. So there is quite a strong transmutational vibe about this, star point, that's coming up as we're trying to overcome the egoic impulses in the way that we are generating our world and our environment.
Yeah, and probably kind of reminding us to be somewhat more creative about the process, as opposed to the same old ways won't work, you know, to get the attention or to get that done or what have you. It's different approaches and creative. I mean, Alex, when I was in London, in the Extinction Rebellion was, you know, upright. They were so very creative about how they went about getting attention, you know, with the pink boat and the DJs, and, you know, it wasn't just your sort of placards on the street type of protest. And I mean, that's all settled down now, but I'm sure that they'll be back. But what I heard was that the air quality in London, because all the traffic was kind of kept afield, very much cleared up in those few days. Anyway, interesting stuff, food for thought. But let's move on. I just want to sort of finish this bit with what I see as a very sort of significant point coming up that I've called the secret agent meeting, because there's going to be all what we call in astrology the personal planets. Mercury and Venus will be, in a sense, in this chart, they're not retrograde. They're going to be on the other side of the sun, you know, at their, or just around their superior conjunctions. Venus will have just passed that. Mars is close to the sun, he's on this side of the sun with the moon. And to have all these planets in Virgo at this kind of time that brings us out of eclipse season in August, I feel as though, and also when I had to talk about what 2019 or the biggest aspects of 2019, this was one of them for me, because I feel as though what it takes us to is to a real kind of planning and focus and intention for what's at the end of all of this. So it's almost like very Virgoan to work towards something, you know, in particular this year that we're all kind of on about. So anyway, we'll have to have a big meeting then. Any thoughts on that? No, well, let's move on.
I like that. I like that you've got all the main players that we've been talking, all the personal players in the charts we've been looking at, all involved there, trying to. Yeah. Well,
it shows everyone else that's watching how, you know, that all moves around while we've still got this, you know, all of these are still pretty much, you know, in the same areas, but we can see the personal planets all kind of congregating together for, you know, what is the meeting about, and you can think about that much more intentionally in your own life and planning and that type of thing. Alex, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say, I like the way that Mars and Venus have been purified by, you know, going through the sun, you know, so I think that's incredibly powerful. I just want to go back to...
Actually, Mars and Venus are actually opposite each other in that chart, you know. To the trained eye, we can see that they are in a conjunction near the sun, but they're actually opposite each other in the sky. Anyway, yeah, but yes, purified by the sun, by you know, I like that, yeah. So that's kind of a nice combo coming up. Now, because we're running out of time, it's already been an hour. It's like, Theo, we're going to take it over to you. Theo has got some interesting theories that he's going to share. And because it is the solstice, and I've heard a little bit about this, but I haven't watched all your videos, Theo. There's so much astrology going on out there that I don't have time. But I'll leave it over to you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to make it quick because I do mundane astrology a lot, and also been doing a lot of research with the flipping of the zodiac across the equatorial hemispheres, which is proving to be quite surprisingly, you know, quite surprising to myself, even someone who's wanting to keep things the way they are. So I just looked at the Ingress chart for the southern hemisphere in a couple of countries here, just to highlight what's been going on this last week, or, you know, the major issues that have come up. And this is, I was for a while not sure which was the capital for Australia, but Canberra is what I use, and I think that's sort of compromise that happened with Sydney and Melbourne. And what's happening here is the ruler of the Ingress is Saturn in Cancer. So again, I'm not going to emphasize the Cancer Capricorn axis with the flip because it's going to be a reflection point, but Saturn is ruling the 4th house in this chart, and here I've already flipped the chart for the southern hemisphere.
Can we? Sorry, Theo, I'm just going to explain to people who might not know what we're looking at here. Is Theo, being a sidereal, Vedic astrologer and a tropical astrologer, has a theory to flip the signs, so to speak. So everything in this chart you will kind of, let's say, recognize as what we've seen, you know, Pluto, Saturn on the south node and so on. But the signs are flipped, okay? And so anyway, back over to...
Yeah, so existential crisis aside, but that's what I've been testing for a long time now. And in this chart, you can see Saturn ruling the fourth house, which I'll focus on first. So this is the Ingress chart for the location of the capital in Australia. So tell us what's happening in Australia, what's in the next couple of months, what's important. And Saturn ruling the fourth house, it has to do with the land, it's to do with all things of the land, resources of the land, and the use from a corporate commercial point of view. That's Capricorn in the fourth house. What's recently passed since the new government has taken shape, because Australia had elections in May, middle of May, that have, I think, not as yet formalized in terms of the results, but everyone pretty much knows that Scott Morrison is the new Prime Minister. They approved a very long-standing big coal mine project, the Carmichael coal mine project, to be worked on by a company in India or from India. They just approved it a few days ago. The state legislature approved it. They're extracting coal from Australia to sell in other countries in Asia. So the ruler of the fourth house is Saturn, and it's in the ninth house, which is showing import-export value there that is happening. And of course, there's been a lot of problems and contentious, protests on either side about it, because it's a barren area, so there's no living, there's no households, residential, suburban component to it, but people are concerned about the environment. But anyway, Scott Morrison's government was in approval, of this move, so it got passed. And technically, there's still a few environmental things to go through. But that was the main thing that I saw here. The ruler of the Ingress was Saturn, and it's ruling the fourth house. The other thing that they've had, I think, is one of the journalists that they've had some issues with, and that's the Mars-Mercury conjunction there in the third house. I'm just going to move it quickly. So if you go to the next slide, Julija. I'm going to spend too much time on it. So here's New Zealand, and New Zealand, this chart has Scorpio rising in the southern tropical zodiac, and they've had quite a scandal break out the last week about hacking that's been happening, especially on the treasury, the budget for the new year going forward, and it's still ongoing. The House isn't in session yet, so people presume that when the House does come back into session, that Prime Minister Jacinta and the Finance Minister, Mr. Robertson, are going to come under a lot of fire, because there have been mixed statements going back and forth about how this is being handled. Basically, the budget, some information was claimed to be hacked and claimed to have been leaked, and they're trying to cover it up, and people said, don't let it leak and don't tell. So there's a lot of mixed messages going on there, but I think some truth to that is going to come forward. You do see that the moon ruling the ninth is very strongly placed on the midheaven here. So the government, especially the female prime minister, is going to have a very strong stand, and I think that she'll get through it just all right. And the hacking is obviously the Mars-Mercury that's coming together, Mars ruling the ascendant and Mercury ruling the 8th house, and the 11th house is about hacking with the treasury, okay, 8th house and the 11th house coming together with the Mercury, how we've been speaking about it. So that is where the nodal axis, the north node point is, and that's ruled by the Saturn, ruler of the Ingress. So very important, that's happening in New Zealand currently. Okay, next chart. And this is my home country, South Africa, the executive capital. We have 3 capitals, but we use the executive capital for the Imagine Astrology chart. Again, all in the Southern Hemisphere, since the end of 2017, we've had Saturn going to Cancer. So domestic policy, land issues, that's what we are focusing on here. That's important for countries in the Southern Hemisphere. We're not having internal governments dissipate and destructure so much. And in South Africa, it's been about the land issue. So people that have suffered colonial oppression in previous regimes are saying that we want our land back. And there's an issue there whether we have that with compensation or not. And as you can imagine, it's potentially a big issue that the government is spending a lot of time, the opposition parties are also spending a lot of time talking about, and legislation has been proposed moving things forward. So it's not just, pie in the sky sort of stuff. Here, of course, in the southern tropical zodiac, we have Cancer rising, which is appropriate for the rising issue the next half of the next quarter for the year being about the land and its people. And historically, that Saturn with the South Node in Vedic astrology also represents their ancestors and their role. So we have that also bearing with the Cancer archetype of the land. The moon ruling the ascendant is in the second house, Leo. So the question is about the compensation aspect. How is that going to happen? And that's basically a very big, important part. The Lord of the fourth house is the Mercury, and that is connected to the midheaven as an action point for the government going forward. So, okay, next slide.
Well, I can see things, really connecting in the story, in this political stories that you're telling, especially about the land and who owns it. But again, we can see that as a polarity thing as well, can't we? I can imagine that you're going to be doing so much more work with this.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of
telling
research.
us more about that. Just quickly, before we'll get back into the discussion, but Andrew has to go because it's Father's Day. Is that correct?
Yes, happy Father's Day.
We just want to say goodbye to Andrew.
It's Father's Day, and it's Father's Day today, and there's going to be I'm going out for breakfast now, and my daughter's partner is having his first Father's Day because I'm a granddad now since last year, so it's going to be great, through generations. So it's fantastic. So
I know nice. Capricorn.
Happy Father's Day.
The South Node. Yeah.
Happy Father's Day.
Well done, Grandpa. Yeah. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you so much
for your
time.
I know. I have to grow a few more grey hairs. Sorry. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks. Lovely being Andrew. Online with
Happy
everybody.
Solstice,
Take
and
care.
We'll be in touch. See you, mate. All right. Yes. Sorry, Theo. An interesting concept. I mean, when I looked at your video the other day, we'll put all the links for following Theo and Alex and Andrew in the threads and stuff. But if you want to, because those videos are just on your YouTube channel or whatever, so you go through the theory,
yeah, that's right.
Looking at your own chart through a reverse
and
sign.
I've looked at also mundane astrology charts, event charts, charts.
Okay.
There's a lot.
Because I looked at my chart the same way. I can see some things I probably need to spend more time kind of considering. I do have a stellium in Pisces in my fourth house, and considering that to be in Virgo kind of doesn't get me anyway. But I'd have to again look at it a lot more. But yeah, really interesting stuff. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Now let's keep going. Because Alex has something she's.
I think that is sufficient. So thank you.
What was that?
I was saying I think that's sufficient. So thank you.
Sufficient. Do you want to speak more? Sorry, I've just kind of time-wise.
No, I'm saying it is sufficient. So thank you.
Oh, I see. Right. So thanks, Theo, for that. Now, just before I finish what I've got my slides here, I just want to remind you all that. Coming up at the CIA, we have 2 webinars a month, really great presentations by all these amazing agents. There is a really great catalogue building up, as in, you can log into the website and access a whole lot of material. These are the things coming up. So astrology and epigenetics with Tad Mann, the astrology of Mary Magdalene with our full moon rider Laura, and the Eclipse portal taking us in with evolutionary astrologer Shannon Gill-Jones next week. So, and then an August symposium on the Venus star in Leo where members get more discount. So do go on the website and check it out. If you are going to be looking at this video, we are going to have a special Solstice 25% off the gold membership by using the Solstice 2019 code. So good time to get in and let's say stay on that sort of price point for the time of your membership. With the gold membership, if you are new to astrology, you can also get astrology lessons. There's 12 per year, so it's kind of like a slow feed, but you can learn right from the beginning, and there's bonuses all the time. So if you're not ready to take on like a big commitment, let's say, to study astrology right from the beginning, but kind of know a lot yourself, or would like to kind of have a slow feed of it just for the lessons, that is, then do consider the membership. And of course, there's a lot more for you there as well. And then what Alex is going to sort of take us into now is there's a gathering happening, a very interesting gathering happening with a lot of the CIA agents. You can see a lot of their faces on this screen now, but Alex is going to tell us more about it. Theo's going to be there. It's a combination of East meets West astrology and the diversity of astrologers that do the different tropical and sidereal, let's say, astrology charts, what we can learn from each other, and we're all part of it. So I'm very happy to be part of it. Or the CIA as sponsors as well. So Alex, over to you, because you're a chief organizer of all of this, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. I started doing this 2015. I got to India for the first time, and they made a pretty big impression on me. So I've been with the Institute of Vedic Culture ever since. But just for anybody new who's listening, just to make a distinction, that the Vedic or Jyotish astrologers use a sidereal zodiac, whereas the tropical astrologers, Western astrologers, tend to use the tropical zodiac. So so I just want to make that distinction. It's not two different zodiacs, really. It's just two different starting points. But what I found out more and more is there's we have a lot more in common than we have difference. So I'm just going to share my screen, if that's okay. If I can find the screen. Oh, yes, here we go. So just going to show a few pictures, really, about who we are and what we do. So we are first and foremost a school. The Institute of Vedic Culture is the conference, but the school is called the Krishnamurti Institute of Astrology. We have about 600 active students. We graduate and give certificates to students of all levels, from very beginners to honorary doctorates. So you'll find when you come to India that being an astrologer means something completely different. You'll be honored as an astrologer. It should leave a pretty good taste in your mouth. You'll be respected for what you know and your knowledge, but yet as a Western astrologer, you'll also be challenged to continue building on that knowledge. This is just a picture of all of us in our saris. There's on our last day of the conference, the women wear the traditional sari. They're invited to wear the traditional sari, and the boys are invited to wear the sherwani. So this is just a picture of the women. This is back in 2015. We have an astral party to end all astral parties at IVC. So this is just a picture of a few astrologers coming in. You can see that they're very surprised because the decor is like that of an Indian wedding. It's very beautiful. It's just a gorgeous place to meet Vedic astrologers on their own turf, and to relax and to share ideas. This is one of my favorite pictures out of the IVC 2018. This shows Roy Gillett, who's president of the Astrological Association of Great Britain, walking in with A.V. Sundaram, who is a very prominent Jyotish astrologer in India. And so I just love it that these two very different astrologers are actually leading the way for all the other astrologers into this astral party. And here we all are boogieing on the dance floor. You can see that contrary to what you might think about India, in some parts of India are extremely modern. We had drones and lit up dance floor. We had DJs, all things that I've never ever seen at any other astrology conference anywhere else. Here we are presenting our magazine, our conference magazine called Constellation News, which is in English, although Jyotish Nakshatra the Vedic magazine has been around for a very, very long time. But here we are presenting our conference magazine, which has all the articles written by the Western astrologers. And this is, they're translated and distributed via Jyotish Nakshatra. This is the opening dance. You have not lived until you've seen the opening dance. The very first time I saw the opening dance back in 2015 was the moment I realized that I needed to bring more Western astrologers over to India to experience this beautiful thing. And this is just another picture of the women dancing. It's just sort of a total sensual sense overload, immersion kind of thing. So just an open invitation, really. And if you're a CIA member, you are automatically eligible for a 10% discount plus all the early bird rates going on. So it's a good idea to head on over to the ivcconference.com website and register and become a part of this really important event. We're not trying to convert anybody to Jyotish. We're not trying to convert anybody over to the Western. It's all about sharing friendship and scholarship and bringing astrology together, because we no longer live in a world where we could pretend it's them over there and us over here. We must stand shoulder to shoulder together to endure the outrageous arrows of skepticism from our skeptics. Okay, thank you.
Very good. So true. Yeah. The stronger we are together, hey? The stronger we will be together, for sure. Well, yeah, I really urge you. I was there last year. It was incredible. Yeah, going again. You know, last year we were at a hotel, a pretty amazing hotel, 5-star and all that, and we were watching this building being built next door, this monster of a building that is now ready, and the new hotel where this conference will be at. It's incredible. I've never seen anything like it in my life. So I really look forward to being in that hotel.
Back in 2018,
it was being built, a shell. Yeah,
it was just a shell.
Yeah.
In 2016, it was not even. It was just. I think it was photographs of this, and then the next thing you know, there was a model and the shell next door.
Yeah.
And then now, when I went back, back in February, I got to go inside, and it was absolutely the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. And it's really the jewel of West Bengal. They did the inauguration ceremony a few days ago. They're all so proud of it. And I think that a lot of Indians are really keen on pushing aside this idea that they're poor and dirty, and they want to show what they can do, because they're becoming a powerhouse, you know, in a global powerhouse. So, you know, it's a very exciting time to be in India.
Yeah. It's a really great thing to be happening, the combination of East and West. And so for anyone who wants a really exciting kind of conference to come to and meet all of us, of course, and many, many others, you know, do think about coming to India. And any members, agents, you know, do get in touch, and, you know, we'll put you in touch with the right people for coming with us, really. It goes for 4 days, isn't it? 4 days?
There's 2 days of workshops, intensive workshops, which covers the Krishnamurti Institute of Astrology syllabus for our students, and then it goes into the tracks for the next 4 days. So it's going to be quite intense, but you don't have to go to every single workshop. You need time out, take time out, you know, but it is going to be a real smorgasbord of different techniques and just a way of exploring safely. You know, and where, you know, the speakers know we need to break things down, you know, to make things easy to understand, and just a great way of meeting new friends from around the world and really help bridging East and West, North and South, bringing astrologers together.
A lot of people,
diversity
from different parts of the world, like having been to many American conferences or in the US. Yes, you meet a lot of people there, but this was like meeting people from Germany and Turkey, and you know, anyway, you don't see that as much. So
China. We have a big involvement with China this year.
South Africa.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, South Africa was very key in you know, doing this. Richard Alvin Fiedler was, you know, one of the very first astrologers to come to this conference, and then last year we had Nikki Smuts and Nancy. Rod Suskin and Nancy, as well as Richard. And so, you know, I just really think this is you know, South Africa has been so key, and with you and Australia, Julija, you know, it was just.
Well, there's quite
important.
a few Aussies coming this time too, and I've many have said they want to come, so I'm going to remind them. Yeah, let's get on to it. It's going to be here before we know, and after the next eclipse season, isn't it?
Yeah, 7 months.
Actually, 2018, we were there for an eclipse.
I don't know if we're ready for it.
You remember we were there in February 2018 on an 11 degrees Leo eclipse, which is the CIA's secret agent.
Right on my Mercury and my MC.
Yes, CIA's Mercury is 11 Leo. And
I remember that eclipse well.
Anyway, it was great, and we look forward to, so encouraging you all, join us, join the membership, come to India, check in. I'm going to put in some links through the threads for Leo's work, for Alex's memes. I have to say I don't do as many as I used to. You go through sort of phases in astrology, you know, like what you get into and then what you do next. So anyway, we've got Pluto, our ascendant, so we're kind of keeping a little bit quiet for other reasons. But anyway, we're still here and still strong. So we'll see you all soon. Thank you, Theo, for coming online with us today. Thank you, Alex. And thank you to all who were online on the webinar here, and then anyone else that will be watching this over the next coming weeks. So happy solstice, happy eclipse season. Be well, be safe, and as always, astrology can tell you so much more about what's going on with the agents. So we'll see you next time, and all the best.